Welcome to the Spawn Chunks, episode number 310, recorded Monday, August 12th, 2024. This is a podcast all about Minecraft, available across all of the major podcasting platforms, including the new video version on YouTube. If you're listening or watching this, consider subscribing if you're enjoying it. It really does help us out a lot. My name is Joel Duggan, and joining me, as always, is Fashionista Pixel Riffs. Hello, sir.
Hello, yes. I don't know if I would necessarily call myself a fashionista, but that's at least what we've been talking about in the render distance. A little bit of fashion, a little bit of how we need to spruce up our wardrobes, and a few other things that stretch the pocketbook from time to time. A bit of retail therapy, it does help. That's over at the render distance. That's the extended version of the podcast, which our patrons can get if you sign up at patreon.com/thespawnchunks. We do a little pre and post show for every episode where our patrons get to hear about what's been going on in our lives and just other stuff that has piqued our interest at the time. They also get access to the Discord where they can listen live to the show, and we have some monthly events that happen in there and quarterly events, both of which happened this last couple of weekends. So our monthly hangouts happened where our patrons can let us know what they've been up to in Minecraft that month. We talk about trends in building in the Minecraft community. And then the quarterly hangout just happened this past Saturday where Joel and I went over some of the facts and figures, the behind the scenes stuff about the podcast, like how it's performing across different platforms, how the video format is doing now it's on YouTube, etc., etc. So that's all in the Patreon RSS feed as well, and you can get all of that from patreon.com/thespawnchunks.
So what have you been up to this week in Minecraft?
So, in the Minecraft Survival Guide, I am building an iceboat road, or I have built an iceboat road, out to a new project area, which I think I mentioned briefly on the show before. I've decided that I'm going for it, and I'm building 6,000 blocks away from my starting point, so I needed an iceboat road for transport, and this is going to be a built-up fantasy area where I'm planning on having the whole power structure, like the like literal electricity or whatever, or the kind of power sources of this city, be centered around conduits and heavy cores, which is obviously kind of an expensive thing to build around, but I want to build up a large kind of fantasy area that doesn't feel like it's low-tech medieval fantasy, but doesn't feel completely modern and, you know, cyberpunk or whatever. So I'm going with a bit of an eclectic build style inspired by some video games I've played and some concept art that I've seen, some of which was from ages ago, and I even started a build, I think on the lead up to 1.16, because I think I was using netherite blocks very optimistically in some of the building, and I want to try and work in some of the stuff that I was working on back then. So I'm actually deep diving my own archive of stuff I've saved from old PCs that wasn't necessarily done on this computer, and trying to find some builds I did back then from like my old Minecraft world. But in the meantime, Fantasy Minecraft SMP has been a great inspiration for some of that, even though that takes more of a medieval high fantasy kind of style. So I'm working on a bit of building there as well. I'm working on a creepy mansion because my character is a revenant. I've kind of been raised from the dead on the Origins mod. That's the sort of the thing that allows you to pick a class or a race when you sign in for the first time. So some people are dwarves, some people are elves, some people are going with like mages and sorcerers, and some people are more fighters. And I'm sort of going down a necromancer kind of route. And I keep stumbling into quests and things without really intending to, but I'm still just exploring the space and trying to get what inspiration I can glean from what exists out there in Minecraft already.
I was watching a bit of Mythical Sausage's intro video about the fantasy Minecraft server, and was really intrigued by the whole RP system and the selection of your race or your class. Yeah. And it also affects the scale of your player.
Yes.
You could be a fairy, like you could be really tiny, the dwarves really are shorter. Elves are a little bit taller. I think Mythical chose a high elf or something, and so he had like magic powers, but also he was a little bit taller, and he was like resilient to certain things. I thought that was really interesting. It's a nice twist on the regular sort of Minecraft RPG, which is, we'll say, RPG light. I mean, you're kind of bringing it all yourself, which is cool, because I mean that's what the sandbox game is all about. But when you have those kind of traits, and there was a lot of them, the mod offered quite a few choices, almost too many. And I think it's a neat way just to kind of play modded, get into that experience, and have it be very different in terms of your decision making, because I find that modding can be overwhelming, or mod packs can be overwhelming. But if you have like the fact that you're raised from the dead as like your theme that informs your choices and makes your decision making a little bit more streamlined. You feel like a little bit less overwhelmed. You're not tempted by like, oh, that's a really pretty shiny magic thing, but that's not my jam right now. I'm
Yeah.
undead. Like I have to be, has to be creepy, has to be dark. You know, like it kind of helps you with the imagination, kind of gives you some direction.
Yeah, definitely. And so it helps that they've built the community settlement where we're sort of building up like an RPG town. Fwip and Sausage have built across the road from each other, and it's built around the entrance to a mod that I think is basically meant to be a Minecraft interpretation of the pixel art roguelike Dead Cells, which I haven't played, but I've seen people play it. And so Mine Cells, which it's creatively named, has a lot of decorative elements that really work well for that creepy atmosphere. The blocks themselves, these kind of like prison blocks, are all, a kind of darker blue, like almost like a navy blue take on, standard stone bricks and everything. So there's a bit of a build palette there. But then there's lots of broken barrels, rusty cages, extra chains and piles of chains, iron bars, all that kind of stuff. And you can go in and loot the dungeon. There are blocks in there that you can't break, but a lot of the scenery you can harvest and take for yourself with just minimal gear. So I've been exploring a bit of that just to get some stuff to start with. And Fwip came in and helped me. He had a silk touch tool, so we went around like grabbing some of the stuff that I couldn't get myself, like wall hanging vines that were different colors and things like that. So now I've started to build up this creepy mansion. Haven't done too much of the structure yet. I've been sort of working on interior and exterior at the same time. But I've got a hallway populated with some paintings that are just standard paintings, but they've reskinned them for the resource pack, as they have with a lot of the other blocks. And then, there's wooden beams that aren't typically part of the Minecraft block palette because they're smaller oak logs that are just kind of thinner. And there's crates and things that I brought over from Mine Cells. So there's a few different bits and pieces that are helping to bring the whole thing to life and help it feel like, even where the texture pack has made a lot of the blocks look more detailed from their vanilla versions, I can bring in a level of detail that matches that. And I'm going to talk a lot about that in the main discussion, where we're going to be unpacking like the process of working with mods in general. But yeah, for now, that's been where I'm splitting my time, really, between Survival Guide and the more like long-term project-focused stuff, and Fantasy Minecraft, where I'm just figuring out what on earth I can do and trying to play along with what everybody else's vibe is.
Well, speaking of mods, that's something that I was dealing with this week. I updated the Citadel to 1.21, and we are now running on Tricky Trials. I have not gone and found a trial chamber just yet. I was pleasantly distracted by a new project, which was in the process of gathering materials for West Hill, because I run out of things like moss and other landscaping bits. I also found myself next to the iron farm, which is next to the moss farm. Iron farm was broken, and my immediate desire after logging into 1.21 was to try to find a practical use for the crafter. And I thought, well, straightforward, I'll just go to the iron farm and I'll turn all the iron ingots into iron blocks automatically for the rest of the people on the server, and that'll be a nice little project. Until I found out that the iron farm was broken. And so I thought, well, now I have to fix the iron farm. And so I thought, it's a good opportunity to take a break from West Hill. And so that's what I did. I decided to start fixing the iron farm. I'll share some screenshots of the old iron farm. And when I say old, I'm talking 1.12, maybe 1.13. Like this involved doors, like 20 doors on 4 sides of a box to try and get, golems to spawn in the trap. But since it has been updated, the mechanics, I guess, servermate Alistair had gone and changed the inside. So he didn't have to change the trap. He didn't have to change the doors because they were just inconsequential at that point. He just added the zombie constantly scaring 3 villagers. The golems would still spawn in the trap, essentially. And he thought it was working. I don't know whether the things changed again since then, but what was happening was the scanning box and the spawning box for the iron farm, which is up in the air by 10 blocks maybe, was too close to the ground. And so golems were spawning outside of the trap. They were wandering around in the area. The villagers were seeing the golems and not spawning any more golems. So essentially they just came to a standstill. And because of the golems wandering around, the golems would wander outside of the area, and then another golem would spawn, and then both golems would be wandering around constantly, either in or out of the detection area. So it just became a real pain in the butt. So I thought the easiest solution would be to just raise the entire thing up. And it was structurally easy to do. Moving mobs, on the other hand, not my favorite thing to do in Minecraft, and not the easiest thing to do either. So surprisingly, the villager wrangling was pretty easy. I used a bunch of dirt scaffolding and some mine carts and activator rails, and was able to move the villagers pretty seamlessly without anybody dying, which was my main concern, because the nearest village is miles away. Like, have to bring them through the nether kind of miles away. So I really didn't want to have anything like that happen. And then I had to move the zombie. And I thought, okay, well, the zombie's in a cauldron. Maybe I can just use the pistons to push the cauldron directly up and have the zombie stay in it. Didn't realize that the block above the zombie was keeping the zombie in the cauldron, and that the moment that that block above the cauldron was removed, he would jump out, which he did. And that's fine because he didn't die or anything like that. But then I had to move him up. Finally decided to use a water column to move him all the way up to the top. Player error, my error, didn't have that area completely enclosed, and he just walked off the edge and died, falling down into my new water trap for the golems, which didn't have any water in it. Had it had water in it, it would have been fine. Anyway, cue the next 90 minutes on stream or more of me trying to capture a zombie, trying to get one to spawn near enough or high enough that it's not going to be a giant pain in the butt. So I did that forever. Could not get one to spawn. Finally snagged one on the lower level and thought, all right, well, worst case scenario, I have to extend this water column another 20 blocks, and I'll bring up this scary Steven, is what we called him, at the bottom to the very top. Well, as I was prepping for that, at the very last second, a zombie spawned at the top. And so I stopped everything that I was doing. And I name tagged the zombie at the top. I was smart enough to have like several name tags, and it was nighttime. So I was like, okay, whatever, we're grabbing this guy. And so I was able to get that guy and get him into the cauldron. And pro tip, if you're doing this and the zombie is being very stubborn and will not actually go inside the cauldron, which I think is essential for its eye line to the villagers in this kind of setup, then use a trapdoor on a piston, and the trapdoor is just thick enough that he'll push the zombie over the edge of the cauldron and he'll fall in. Once he was in, locked him in, not going anywhere. So everything was working as desired. And I think I've got the problem solved. So I've got some screenshots that I'll share in our show notes, as well as with our live viewers, where I've got Mini HUD, which is a mod we use on the Citadel for just technical things, farms, areas, measurements, that kind of stuff. And you can see the inside bounding blocks of the spawning area, which is 6 by 6 vertically in either direction, and then 8 horizontally in the other two directions, to give you kind of like a squat kind of cube where the golems can spawn. And then there's like a 16 by 16, I think I might have made it a little bit larger in my case, area where the villagers scan for golems. And this still clips the edge of the mountain that's nearby and was our source of the problem before. But because I've now got the spawning area completely clear, there's nothing but just my one spawning platform, I think I'm good. I don't think I need to do a lot of landscaping, or I don't need to tear down the whole mountain. I'm still going to landscape it a bit. I've learned so much since we started the server, and I think this whole area could be improved upon a great deal. As I'm redesigning this farm, I'm going to make it look like the Moss Farm, which is directly across from it. And the Moss Farm is only a couple years old, has new blocks like honey blocks and shroom lights in it. So there's similar design aesthetics. The Dartmouth Meadows farms are all kind of like neon glass and lights, but with like logs and water flumes and things like that around. So I'm going to go in that direction. I didn't have to change any of the guts of the iron farm. The golems are spawning in, they're falling down, they're getting cooked. We're getting, I think it was 46 iron ingots an hour, something like that, which is not nothing, you know, and considering that it's running constantly in the spawn chunks and it will always just produce iron, then I think we're going to be okay. The only thing that I did that I changed was I did notice a bit of a slowdown. It's not constant, but sometimes the golems would see the zombie before they went down the water chute, because the way that my farm was designed from years ago, the hole was only a 2x2. Most of the time it's a 3x3 in modern iron farm designs, because the golems just go straight down, like they don't have a chance to hang on to the edge at all. But they would see the zombie and fight the current. And all I did was surround the cauldron with a single ring of glass. and that cut the line of sight from the golems to the zombie, and so now they can't see him, they just go straight down. So that will increase the efficiency a little bit. Not that I was terribly worried about it, but I just kind of noticed that and thought, I wonder if I can problem solve this. And just, I think I know what the issue is. And I couldn't find any info on golems, but I could find that villagers need pure line of sight to a zombie to be scared. It can't be through glass. They can't see through glass. So I thought, well, if villagers can't see through glass, there's a really good chance that iron golems can't see through glass. So that's what I used. So now that it's all functioning, I'm very happy with it. It was a very long stream. I think it was about 4 hours and 20 minutes or something like that. But it was productive, and I felt accomplished, and I learned a lot about the mechanics for the new iron farms, which is cool. I like learning new stuff about Minecraft like that. And so now this week will be the really fun part of decorating it, making it look like the moss farm. I'm probably going to bring in some shroom lights, and there's lava in the bottom that's cooking the golem. So I want to incorporate that orange color and make it look like it's glowing with, the heat and the power of melting down these golems. And I have to figure out what to do with the top as well. I have some wiggle room in terms of where I can put the spawning platform. So I might get the spawning platform closer to the zombie and the villagers, because it means I could encase it in something a little bit more economic, I guess, in terms of the scale, because it's very high up in the air. It's going to be seen from everywhere, which is good, but I don't want a giant box in the air. Like, I want to try to come up with something creative, and I may try to pay homage to the original design. I don't think I'm going to put the doors in, but I did like that kind of log construction, kind of log cabin overlapping. I can't remember what you call it. It's like a specific type of construction where things are like notched and grooved and put together. So it's going to be a fun design because I've got some things in the area to spring from, and it's also meant to be very functional. So it's not supposed to be too ornate. It's just kind of meant to be pretty straightforward. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I need to work on my iron farm in the survival guide, I think, because it now falls outside the default spawn chunks area. So if if I'm not gonna change the spawn chunks back to what they were with a command, I'll have to like adjust it by like a chunk towards the spawn, like towards the central kind of spawning block of the world. And I have gone more and more bare bones with my iron farms every time I built one in each season of Survival Guide. Like, it started more complex, and then even when they introduced the 1.14 villager mechanics, I built something massive surrounding it. And I just encountered enough problems with like odd blocks that I hadn't spawn proofed and like bits and pieces of the mechanics back in those days when they were slightly less understood, that when I rebuilt it in Season 2 of Survival Guide, I just built a really simple, straightforward thing, but it was in the sky, and it had like a big pit that the golems would fall into, and it was all kind of basalt and blackstone, and it was like the golems were really being cooked in like a furnace inside of there. Whereas this one, because I'm not really building anything near spawn, is really just like a bunch of platforms, a place for the zombie, a place for the villagers, and then the iron golems drop off into a pit, and that's it. Like, there's no kind of decoration. Like, I've spawn proofed it just by turning all of the grass around it into grass path blocks, and that's it. Like, that's really all I needed to do. So I think maybe if I do end up moving it and completely redesign it, I will end up decorating it a little bit more, because it feels like such an important part of your world, and it's fun to decorate technical projects anyway, but it does feel like there should be some sort of effort put into its design, even if it just has to be functional at the end of the day.
I have to refresh my memory, because I know that the spawn chunks changed. Did they also change the redstone spawn chunks? Because if that's the case, then I might have to run some commands on the Citadel as well, because the spawn chunks where you actually come back as a player is, I know, got a lot smaller, and we've not changed anything like that on the server for years. And this is near spawn, but I don't know if it's within a short spawn chunk radius. It is within the redstone spawn chunks, which I think is 12 chunks in either direction from spawn point. But I know that I mapped it all out. It took me forever, but I physically have a map of blocks in the world that indicate the spawn chunks versus the redstone spawn chunks.
Yeah, I think now the redstone processing stuff just happens an additional chunk out from the 3x3 of chunks that is like the spawn chunks. So the stuff that's constantly loaded is there, and the redstone process is just like an additional chunk overlapping that. So you'll find that it's a lot smaller of an area than it was pre 1.21. And yeah, that might need a little bit of adjusting, whether through an admin command or like if obviously if it's built outside of that, you'll probably want to use a command, because you don't want to
not
move everything you've just done. Yeah.
No, well, we also have a decoration sort of area around our spawn point and like an introduction, and we have things set up where the ender pearls from the end come in, and so you can get, some health, some carrots, and some ender pearls like the moment that you spawn onto the server. So
Hmm.
if you die and you lose all your stuff and you go back to spawn, at least you've got some stuff immediately to kind of get you through the next 5 minutes until you get your stuff back. So yeah, I'll have to look into that, and I don't mind changing that because it's a forever world. I mean, I 7 years ago we never would have expected the spawn chunks to change, their
Yeah,
their location, right?
for sure. Yeah, but it's something we all have to adjust to, I guess, including me. But I might adjust it in the other way because my iron farm is a little bit less complicated.
Speaking of adjustments, we do have some news this week. Minecraft Java Edition 1.21.1. A release candidate version was published on August 7th, but this had an identical changelog to the full release, which was published on August 8th. Quote, it will soon be time for new snapshots, but before that, we are now releasing Minecraft 1.21.1. This is a hotfix version that addresses some critical exploits. We highly recommend that server owners upgrade to this version. Players on Minecraft 1.21 will be able to join servers running 1.21.1. The changes in 1.21.1 fixed critical exploits that could be used to crash servers and added language support for Zotzil and Belarusian with Latin alphabets.
One other item of news that we wanted to bring to your attention was the fixing of a bug that caught a little bit of the community's attention this week. This was a 3-number bug, so like a really, really old one. It was MC201, and this is your field of vision not turning at all with the turning of a minecart. If you've ridden a minecart but you're traveling on rails, when you turn a corner, you continue looking in the same direction, and that's been reported as a bug since the old days of minecarts being implemented. Over the weekend, this old bug was marked as resolved, and then got reopened with a fixed version coming in an unspecified future update. So this got a little bit of attention in our Discord, so we were able to get looped in on this. And Keija in our Discord caught a tweet from Potato Man for MC, aka at Kgil Martin on Twitter, sharing a response to the bug status changes by King B-Dogs. So it got a bit of attention because people thought, hey, this is going to break some farms potentially if riding in a minecart and facing a specific direction is part of the mechanics that you've used in a farm. King B-Dog says, quote, on the FOV minecart stuff, please wait until the next snapshot for more context. The problem with Jira bug closing is that it has a very blunt communication without addressing in what context the bug is fixed. You don't have anything to worry about in terms of things suddenly breaking or anything. It's hard to explain without more detail, but yeah, just wait. We are unsure what Discord the conversation happened in. We don't have the context of the screenshot, so it might have been with the SciCraft folks who often have a discourse with the developers about any kind of technical stuff, or it could have just been a more general Minecraft community Discord. But either way, if you're interested in stuff like this, we'll have a link to the Jira bug in our show notes, as well as a link to the tweet where this discussion took place. So you can go and track that down if you're interested.
I'm all for these bug fixes and hot fixes and stuff to 1.21, and we were just saying a few weeks ago in the show that it's really cool that there haven't been any internal bug fixes. Like there haven't been any features that have needed patches. There hasn't been like a .1, .2, .3 for 1.21 in the first almost 2 months of release. It's only been this very critical exploit that they needed to patch, which of course is super important. And I love that 1.21 players can still connect. So you don't have to be on 1.21.1 yourself if the server has already gone ahead and maxed this update. I don't know what this means for servers that run mods. We're talking about mods today. Having just finished updating all of my mods to 1.21. Well, just regular 1.21 last week, going through again is not something that I really want to do. Now, the good news is we only run a small version or a small handful of mods on the server itself. It's only 5 or 6. Most of them are performance mods. So I'll have to keep an eye out on this and update the Citadel as soon as I can. But hopefully that won't affect all of the mods because I run a lot more on the client side. So hopefully it won't be a giant headache.
Yeah, it seems like there are few enough changes in this version that it's going to be very easy for mod authors to update as well. It's not like a bunch of stuff is changing under the hood. It's not like a bunch of new code was really introduced. It's much more about preventing this server crashing exploit from happening. And I did hear a little bit of a buzz around there being exploits in 1.21, so I guess this has just put a lid on those. And of course, we're not getting any new features with this. We're not getting the bundles that they're saying are coming to Bedrock Edition, so are presumably arriving in Java soon. It also doesn't add the hopper barrel trash cans that King B-Dogs posted an image of on Twitter that we discussed last week for trial chambers. It doesn't add the item sprites that they've posted that are going to be coming to the different banner pattern items to make it more obvious what patterns you get. So we saw those shared on social media, but it seems like that's going to be saved for the next minor release that's presumably going to be 1.21.2. But in the meantime, yeah, this should be nice and simple to upgrade to, and it seems to only really be of concern to people running public servers or, you know, any kind of server where people are prone to getting up to mischief and will try these exploits and stuff when you learn about them, whereas obviously the Citadel is a community of friends, a private server, and something that I expect most people wouldn't want to bother with.
Yeah, and I think it's just a nice reminder of that kind of thing. If you are running a server, make sure you've got proper passwords to your accounts for your back end, making sure that only the people that you're, sharing the IP address have it, and they haven't shared it with anybody they're not supposed to. Make sure everybody involved has proper passwords, all that kind of stuff. So there are lots of things that you can do to minimize this kind of thing. But yeah, that's one of the reasons why I'm glad that we don't deal with any public servers, because it just seems like such a logistical nightmare sometimes, not all the time, but like it just feels like it could be a lot of headaches are avoided by keeping your servers private.
Yeah. With regards to the minecart fix, though, I think it's a really interesting one. And if they have some solution for both being able to look one direction in a minecart or to look straight ahead and fix your FOV to the front of the minecart, I think that's really cool, because let's just say they implement like a keybind or something that locks your field of view, like even the perspective button could do that when you're in a minecart. I think that's great for people who want to build stuff like roller coasters and want a hands-off experience for something like that, but keeping it in mind for, I think the example I saw listed was a nether wart farm, where a lot of the time you're waiting for the wart to grow and you're just going around in a circle, planting it and then harvesting it once it reaches a certain height. And, that's kind of an essential thing. If you don't want to do that with water streams, you can do it with a minecart. And I think it's going to be a lot better if players have more control over that. And the additional follow-up tweets from the community on this thread were about, maybe they've set it up so, there's player control over this in some way or another, like it's in settings or something like that. It could be an accessibility feature, for example. So, like, there's a bunch of different ways it could be implemented, but if it's going to cover both bases, then hopefully everyone's happy with that.
Yeah, I think the farm thing is something that this quote unquote bug has been around for so long that Minecraft players have utilized it as a feature and saying, okay, well, if this is going to be something that's a pain in the butt when I'm trying to ride a minecart hands free, but it does come in handy if I always want to point the same direction and I need to use that to harvest things. I think Doc M does something similar on Hermitcraft this season with like harvesting bushes and leaf blocks and whatnot. So I think that kind of stuff is cool to keep around, and it's nice that Mojang is, or it looks like they're trying to fix it more like integrate it, and so that ends up meaning more control for the player, possibly even better gameplay improvements. I'm kind of curious because of how cryptic King Big Dogs was in the response, obviously not wanting to spoil anything ahead of time. I think that it could be, and this is me speculating, a tiny indication that there might be some changes coming to minecarts in general. Maybe these things are going to get, a little bit more love because they've not been updated in a very long time. Yeah. And having just used minecarts to move some villagers over the weekend, like they are tricky. They don't always behave as you expect. And I'd love to see some more consistent stuff, and especially if they address some other things like when you're using minecarts for entity cramming and you've got a bunch of them all piled together and then they make a lot of noise because they're moving back and forth. Like there's a bunch of stuff like that I think would be really interesting if you have like a break line or something that you could stop the minecart. Like there's a lot of stuff that I think they could be improved on. And I wonder if this is just like, all right, well, before we improve the minecarts, let's take a look and see what we can streamline and make sure that they're in good shape, before we start any kind of updates. Let's just kind of fine tune what's already there, address any old standing bugs, or in this case, like I said, like a bug that's so old it's probably a feature.
Yeah, and I wonder how many of those are still out there, because obviously they've been going back and finding some of these older bugs to squash in recent updates, so I'm kind of curious what's still on the hit list.
And I wonder if recent updates have given them better tools, or given them, because Minecraft might be coded differently, or they might be approaching it differently. Like, I wonder if all of a sudden these older bugs are like easier to address now, and that's why they're going back and checking off these boxes. I'd be very curious to hear from a dev on that.
Yeah, definitely. We'll have to pick their brains next time we're able to have a developer on the show. In the meantime, though, I think we should probably move on into chunk mail. So this is the listener email portion of the show where we like to get some email from our community and answer some questions, have some discussions around them. The email address is spawnchunkmail@gmail.com. If you'd like to email into the show, please keep your emails short and to the point. It helps us include them in the show more easily. This first email comes in from the MC Engineer, who happens to be a landscape artist member of our Discord. The subject is a new woodworker villager, and it relates to the wood resource gathering we discussed in episode 309. Hey Johnny and Joel, I've always liked the idea of adding a new woodworker villager and woodcutter workstation. Most of the people I see advocating for this addition just say they want a woodcutting version of the stonecutter, but don't flesh out the idea further. I would implement the woodcutter workstation as it is typically described, and would add the woodworker villager with the following trade pool. And MC Engineer has included a graphic, which we won't go through in full detail, but there's just a bunch of different trades of wooden items that you could sell to a villager or buy from a villager in exchange for emeralds, kind of along the same lines as you get from like a stonemason, for example. Some key features of this woodworker villager could include no desert villager variant, since there aren't many trees in a desert, the ability to buy exotic saplings to help the player obtain rare wood types earlier in the game, a renewable source of wood that doesn't involve mining, the logs and emeralds trade allowing the player to pay the woodworker to strip logs, which can be tedious to do manually, and a new chiseled wood block, as I feel we lack ornate wood blocks and have many chiseled stone variants. Very interested to hear what you guys have to say about the idea.
A lot of thought went into the villager trades for MC Engineer's Woodworker Villager. I'll pull out a couple of highlights here. Local wood types changing depending on the biome I thought was really cool. Makes a lot of sense. A new chiseled wood block would be lovely. Of course, the immediate conversation after that is like, well, where do you put those? Because when you add a wood block chiseled variant, that's at least 10, if not more if you add bamboo.
Yeah.
I did notice some things like 21 bone meal for an emerald. And also 20 saplings for an emerald. Both of those feel a little OP for me, considering how quickly you can get bone meal from a moss farm and just have endless bone meal and then endless emeralds. That kind of feels like a make win button. And especially if you have the same moss farm, if you're siphoning off the saplings. This is a regular oak sapling in the example. I don't know whether a azalea sapling would be considered a rare or exotic wood type, but if it is not, then you'd have... I've got double chests of saplings from my moss farm. Like, again, very easy to get a good stack of emeralds for when you need it. So that might be something that needs a little bit more balance in the thought process. I do really like the idea, like I said, of the chiseled wood block. It's just a little bit challenging. And I guess you could arguably say that the mosaic block from bamboo is like a chiseled version of bamboo. So we sort of already have it. It's not the same as like a chiseled stone block, but it's got the same sort of vibe. It's constructed in the same way.
Yeah, and I think the implication is still that, there'd be one for every different wood type, and it would just be related to the villager's biome, which on the one hand makes sense, but on the other hand, if players can't craft that, then you don't have them for dark oak, since there's no dark oak village. The nether woods wouldn't have them either, although technically they're fungus, so some people don't even count them as wood. Like, you'd have to be very particular about that stuff, or maybe give it to like swamp villagers and jungle villagers and have that be like the exclusive trade for them, especially considering you don't have them for desert villagers, so they'd be omitting one type of villager anyway. There's a couple of things about this. I honestly don't think that the bone meal and sapling trades would be that OP, considering that if we're talking automatic farms, I trade 4 iron ingots to any of my blacksmith villagers and I get an emerald back. And that trade,
Fair.
you can take down to 1 ingot per if you zombify and cure them once, and then set up an iron farm and you're set for life. That's how I've been getting most of my emeralds recently. So like, there's a bit of balancing involved in that, but not too much, considering that when players encounter these villagers for the first time, they're probably just going to be exploring the world and trading with what resources they've been able to gather manually. But then once they know what the villagers' demands are, they can build a farm to support that. So I don't think it's too bad. My personal bug with this is that the thing I don't find that suits the vanilla villager style is buying wood logs directly from them, because we typically sell villagers the raw material and they provide crafted items in exchange. You look at the stonemason, you're never buying natural stone or natural diorite or whatever from them. You sell those resources to them and you get the polished or chiseled version back. And so I think that's really the difficult part here, is that you couldn't use it as a way to farm straight up log blocks, because that's the stuff that the player is meant to go out and gather and then get back a fence or a fence gate or something. And there's a couple of great examples here. I do like the fact that you could have chiseled logs and have the woodcutter just strip the bark off for you and then hand it back. Like, that's quite a cool idea. One of the trades on this list is a trapdoor. The chiseled bookshelf and chests also appear here, so being able to buy chests instead of having to spend your own hand-harvested wood to craft them, I think that's a reasonable approach to it. But I just think selling them the raw material really feels like the way typical villagers work, so it feels like a bit of a change-up to include buying logs off of them, even though I know the appeal of that.
Yeah, I think that's where I would stand too. They did include dark oak and cherry in the exotic wood type. So it wasn't specific as to what biome that would show up in, but those would be considered exotic because they don't have a village, I think, attached to them.
Yeah, makes sense, I guess. And you can still find villages in cherry biomes, but they're still like plains villages, right? So they don't have any kind of like specialism. And biome-specific villages are a really interesting proposition because, like, the way the villagers work, their profession is just like an overlay on the skin that represents like what biome they come from. So you're going to find the same librarian robe and book hat is going to apply to savanna villagers, swamp villagers, even, stuff like that. But not having one of those apply to desert villages is really strange. And I'm not sure if you would necessarily make the connection intuitively that, oh wait, no, of course the desert villagers don't have a woodcutter because there's no wood here. You would sort of think, well, it's glitched or somehow, like, I want to get the desert wood, especially as a new player. I feel like that could be kind of confusing. Yeah. But the current professions being universal regardless of biome is another way that this would kind of break from convention with the existing vanilla villages. And so I'm curious about whether Mojang would even consider implementing something like that. My final point on this is that, yeah, buying exotic saplings from them seems like a cool idea, but then that devalues the already tenuously useful wandering trader, because that's one of the things that's an attraction of the wandering trader, is they can trade you saplings from biomes you haven't found yet, or if you need like dark oak saplings because you've only got 3 and you need 4, then that's one of the reasons the wandering trader showing up could actually be quite useful. And that just, again, cuts out the wandering trader from being, the guy who brings you exotic items at that stage. But I think it's worth considering stuff like this if you're going to implement a woodcutter villager at all, because there aren't really too many other wooden items that you want them to trade without them just trading you the full list of like fences, fence gates, buttons, pressure plates, slabs, that kind of stuff, right? The kind of stuff that the player is really supposed to have a hand in crafting themselves.
Our next email comes in from Brian D., a landscape artist member of our Discord. Episode 309, Renewable Sand Discussion is the subject. In episode 309, you were talking about renewable sand, and I've heard these conversations before, but this time I had an idea I wanted to share. Could Mojang make sand dyeable, add black sand to the nether, and then add black sand to piglin trading? Or perhaps add purple sand with an end update, along with a new mob in the end to trade with. With the crafter in the game, you could automate the dyeing process at a piglin trading farm and have sand piling up for whenever you need. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts. Brian faded off into the desert sunset, alive, while gathering sand. Brian is alive, Pixel Rips. They're alive.
We got one. Yeah, so interesting ideas here. I like introducing more stuff to the Nether, since it has been a few updates since the Nether update. And I think the Nether often gets overlooked for new additions because it's had such a recent upgrade that it feels like now we're working on the overworld for a little while. But it would be nice to drip feed features back into the Nether occasionally if it seems like they would be worth having. And I like the idea of adding black sand to the Nether. I think the Nether's sand is really soul sand and has been since the beginning of the Nether, really. But it doesn't smelt into like soul glass, which has been, I think, a player suggestion since it was originally implemented. It was given a few extra properties in 1.16, like the blue flames, and soul soil was introduced and everything, and obviously has a whole biome associated with it. But I think black sand appearing in soul sand valleys maybe could be kind of cool. You could thematically tie it into the soul sand, like it's soul sand that hasn't yet received the souls that are trapped in there and is just the kind of the catalyst block for that process. Although then adding it to piglin bartering is slightly complicated lore-wise, because piglins don't typically go into soul sand biomes. They don't spawn there, and they're afraid of soul fire. So I do wonder if there's a bit of friction between the idea of implementing it as something that's tied to soul sand valleys and then implementing it in piglin bartering at the same time.
I like the idea of black sand in the Nether as well, and my brain actually didn't go to the soul sand valley. I was thinking about it in other biomes like basalt deltas, or even just the regular Nether wastes, which are still pretty bland compared to the new biomes. Yeah. And I think adding, especially if you added black sand around like lava pits and other lakes and things, like you could really have it help with transitions and make the landscape look a little bit more interesting in the Nether, which would be really fun. I don't know whether black sand is affected by gravity in Brian's brain, but like there could be some weird physics that might happen in the Nether for that kind of thing. But I was thinking about black sand maybe operating a little bit differently, like assuming, sure, that we probably, for Brian's purposes, could smelt black sand into regular glass, and I'm assuming use it in concrete recipes. So it would be partially renewable sand, and I think that's an interesting idea. So if you want sandstone, if you want regular colored sand, if you want to use those things in your builds outside of the overworld, you still have to collect that stuff. But if you're making concrete or making glass or turning that sand into something else where it's no longer sand, then black sand could be the renewable resource that you would use, which is arguably probably more of what people would want it for. I guess TNT is the other example. Maybe you could have some fun with black sand TNT. Maybe it has a bigger blast radius, making it more useful, and means that you don't need as much of it. You could have the sand, black sand combined with regular sand. Maybe it gives you a higher yield. Maybe you just get more sand. So again, you still have to collect some sand in the overworld, but then you could automatically collect the black sand and then increase your yield on the other side. I just thought there could be some interesting ideas in how to implement it. I thought about black glass, but like we already have tinted glass with amethyst crystals, and so it feels like kind of like an overkill. And we already have black stained glass in the overworld as well. I wasn't so sure about dyeing sand. Dyeing sand to me is just concrete powder. Like we already have 16 colors of very sandy looking material. So I don't know if that's necessarily where Mojang would go to it, unless you go with like an earthy tone for the sand, like different tones of yellow and beige, or different tones of like terracotta or brown. Because right now I use brown concrete powder in some of my landscaping, but it's still a little bright. Like it's still a very saturated brown. It doesn't necessarily always go with some of the more subtle browns, like the mangrove bark, or even stripped spruce can be a lot more subtle than something that's brown sand. So it depends on its use case, but it would be interesting to see that kind of stuff be implemented. I do like the idea of sand in the Nether. Really, like, sure, renewable sand is a great idea, but I just like the idea of adding that element to the Nether, because you could use it for all kinds of things. Like if it's not dead black, like obviously you don't want it to look exactly like black concrete powder. So maybe it looks akin to ash, or it looks like broken down blackstone, or something like that, that could work with like the blackstone or the deep slate palettes in the overworld. Any kind of thing that looks more like ground up material from the Nether could be really interesting.
Yeah, I think it works really well around basalt deltas in that case because, I mean, it
Hmm.
lends itself to the color palette really well, but also imagining it being part of a natural process in the nether, the way sand is formed in the real world with like rocks grinding against each other, like imagining that happening with those lava deltas that you get in the basalt deltas in the nether makes a reasonable amount of sense. It's perhaps more likely that the kind of grit and sand and stuff gets washed away by the lava, turned into more lava and like smelted down. But it's a fun thought, at least for a fantasy world like Minecraft. And I sort of agree with you on the dyeable sand, not just because while it could provide a different palette the same way terracotta is to concrete, we could have like dyeable sand to concrete powder, but you also end up thinking, does smelting dyed sand produce pre-stained glass? Does it also end up producing different colors of sandstone? Like, if I can make red sandstone out of red sand and sandstone out of sand, why can't I make black sandstone out of black sand? And suddenly you're thinking about adding 15 additional colors of sandstone, and that
Yeah.
becomes a problem, right? So yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's potentially a bit of a pipe dream in that sense, unless you were somehow able to impress upon the player, okay, only normal sand and red sand do the sandstone conversion thing, everything else is a little bit far-fetched. But I feel like that's when you get friction from players, in the same way you get, why doesn't this have stairs, slabs, and walls associated with it already, right? So
Yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
definitely food for thought, though. I like the idea of incorporating stuff like that into the nether.
Well, we're going to be incorporating a whole bunch of things into our Minecraft gameplay over the next little while. And so this week on the main discussion, we thought we'd talk about mod opportunities in 1.21, with the Citadel updating to 1.21 this week and Johnny starting on Mythical Sausage's Fantasy Minecraft server. We thought it would be a good opportunity to talk about the focus of mod expectations for me on the Citadel versus the discovery of mods and their functionality on the Fantasy Minecraft mod pack. So I'll kick us off with a little bit of just kind of background with the Citadel. As I mentioned earlier, we are on 1.21. Everything that I was using before seems to work, with the exception of two features. The no view bobbing mod is not updated yet, or I have no idea whether it will be updated. It was one of those mods that I don't know if it was really updated for 1.20.4. I think it might have been just a 1.20 mod, and I just tried it and it continued to work. So I was like, cool, I'll keep it. And I'll have to find another replacement for that. Also, the Tables and Chairs data pack. Now, granted, this is a data pack, not a mod, but it is no longer being updated, slash, I was having some trouble with it anyway. So we are now looking for a mod to replace it. So we're looking for a furniture mod on the Citadel. Right now, we're looking closely at Valhelsia furniture. We'll have a link to that on modrinth.com. That's what they decided to use on Infinity Cove, my patron server, after a lot of deliberation back and forth, because they were also using tables and chairs and also wanted to move away from it. So I'm still looking for some furniture mods to replace the tables and chairs. I keep threatening to learn how to make a mod on my own, but I just don't know where to start. And there's a couple of YouTube videos that I've bookmarked to go and visit later, but I just haven't pulled the trigger on that. I've done a little bit of behind the scenes work with data packs. When the Tables and Chairs data pack first came out, I wasn't a fan of the textures, but I loved the functionality. So I went through and I modeled my own chairs and my own textures and kind of implemented that, and then sent them to Axel, and Axel ended up using them going forward, or at least his own version, in the spirit of what the mod was, or the data pack was going to do. Most of the mods on the Citadel actually don't add any new blocks to the game. Nearly everything we have is either a UI mod or a performance mod. So for example, we run sodium, lithium, ferrite core, and a view distance fix on the server. And then for me, on the client side, I'm running Bobby and FreeCam, Iris and Indium for shaders, Zero's mini maps and maps, which we've mentioned before on the show, Mini HUD, which I just talked about earlier today, to have like boxes and spawning spheres and stuff rendered in the game so you can easily see them. And things like Shulker Plus, which is from Captain Wutax, I believe, on Iskal's team of modders that he works with. And that is gives you the ability to add items to the tops of Shulker boxes that you can see in the world. So you can very easily distinguish between your 4 brown Shulker boxes, which one is oak, spruce, dark oak, and other wood colors. And so that I find really helpful, but it doesn't really give you any building advantage in the world. The kind of things we try to implement, I try to keep it in the spirit of vanilla, but really it's about making it a little bit easier to work in the game, to play the game, so I have more time playing and less time trying to remember where I put stuff. And so that tends to be the spirit of what we're doing with mods. The one exception, of course, being the furniture mod, because now that I've gone down that road, tables and chairs just make so much sense in Minecraft, especially where we have a modern city and we've got the medieval towns and stuff going on. It really does help, I think, the immersion of the game. So we're definitely going to be going down that line. So as far as, our mods are concerned, there's not a lot of new gameplay added. It's more about making sure that the features that we're used to going forward, either as a content creator, tools like Matica or Replay Mod are available to us, and less about like, oh, now I can't build my castle because this very unique, pink brick is just not available. And that's just, we don't have anything like that because of my own interest in vanilla Minecraft and because of the show. Like, I really want to keep the Citadel as close to the vanilla experiences as we can, and really just kind of hone it as far as it's more about like that player experience as opposed to the gameplay experience, I guess, for us. So for you on the fantasy Minecraft, has there been a lot of UI changes as well, or is it mostly like now this envelope of mod features opening up in front of you?
It's more that, like, the UI stuff that is there is stuff that I'm mostly used to, and they haven't modified much about the vanilla experience of opening your inventory and sorting through items and stuff like that. The only real inventory tweak that it has is a sort button in the top right corner that just allows you to sort stuff alphabetically by name. I think you can change that somewhere in the configs. I just haven't figured out exactly where to find that and whether I want to use it or not. But the only thing to really get used to with modded, and I think this is more or less a universal thing when you dive into these mod packs, is whether it's called just enough items, not enough items, NEI, JEI, REI, whatever the latest name for it is in Fabric or Forge. There's a huge, effectively, lookup field of a ton of different blocks to the right of the inventory whenever you open your inventory. You can toggle this on and off, I'm fairly certain, but by default it's on. And so that's just the overwhelmingly large list of every block in the game. Sort of think of if you open the recipe book in vanilla and turn off craftable, which is usually just like it takes the recipes from what you've got in your inventory and displays them in the recipe book. And then you're just scrolling through the list of everything it's possible to craft in vanilla. And then multiply that by, 30 or so, because that's how many mods have added blocks and items and all that kind of stuff, right? And so that's always the biggest overwhelming thing for me to get used to when I start a new mod pack, is dealing with all of that being part of the interface, as opposed to the Minecraft interface feeling fairly minimal and having like just the stuff that you've got in front of you is what you can, craft with, and that you don't really have an in-game lookup tool aside from now the recipe book. I say now as though it wasn't implemented like several versions ago, but it still feels relatively new to me as somebody who started playing in Minecraft 1.8. And so, having not been involved with a modded server for a while, with the exception of Empires and SOS, which were modded, but only for very light cosmetic purposes, like being able to change horses into different types of animals on Empires was about as far as we went. And then on SOS, the only mod we had really was the one that provided the gravestones and the revival mechanics, because that just wasn't as easy to do with vanilla data packs and so forth. Aside from that, I've not really done like a big mod pack kind of thing like this. And the objective, according to Fantasy Minecraft Fabric's description on CurseForge, was to incorporate an abundance of fantasy-themed content into Minecraft, which it does, while maintaining the authentic vanilla experience, to which I say, ha. Not quite, but I can sort of see where they're going with it, and I'll get to that in a minute. And it says, furthermore, we have made diligent efforts to harmonize the configurations of all mods, aiming for a seamless integration. I have some thoughts on that too, but generally, like, it's a lot when you log into a mod pack and suddenly everything around you is happening differently. But fortunately, it doesn't throw a ton of GUI changes at you immediately, and I think it doesn't withhold normal Minecraft mechanics arbitrarily the way I've seen some other mod packs do. Like, you look at something like RL Craft, which tries to transform the survival Minecraft experience into something that feels more like realistic wilderness survival, and then you get killed by a weird jellyfish monster. That's my typical RL Craft experience, at least. But what they're basing that on is, when you're out there, it's very difficult to make a wooden pickaxe and then just mine stone. And then your stone pickaxe is going to be able to mine iron, and you can just cook that in a thing that you've also made out of stone. Nonsense. There should be way more steps, because that's not very realistic, and they're trying to apply a more realistic veneer to Minecraft, which doesn't feel like the most realistic game at times, but they've managed to blend that philosophy. And Fantasy Minecraft doesn't do that, and I'm happy about that, because it lets me get into the fantasy mod stuff a lot more easily if I know at least that I can get coal, iron, diamonds, all of that stuff in the same place, and it's still used for more or less the same stuff from the vanilla side of things. You're still crafting stuff in a 3x3. The interface there is the same. And a lot of the other things that you can craft don't have like their own arcane crafting interface with 15x15 crafting grids or something.
Right.
Like, it feels a lot more like what you're used to from vanilla in that sense.
It's nice when you don't have to go to a different block to craft things. The last time I did a modded experience, I think was Olive Fabric 4, maybe 5. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And one of the mods in there had the ability to craft all kinds of different chiseled wood types and glass types and stuff, which is cool. But then you needed a glass table, and then you needed a wood cutting bench, and then you needed a smelting or a brick making bench. And so it was all very different compared to just having the recipes be something that would make sense to a vanilla player in a crafting table, just your 9x9, and just change up the materials, change up the order in which they're put in. Maybe have to smelt something instead of just crafting it at the table. I prefer that kind of vanilla crafting language than any of the really complicated different workstations and stuff, because then you got to figure out where to put them, and you end up walking around more when you just have all those different tables, rather than just keeping everything near your existing crafting table and going from there. I always enjoyed / found the roughly enough items interface overwhelming. I like having it, because when you have something like that and you want to know how to do a cool thing that you've either seen from a description of a mod or you saw another player on the server have, how do I craft like that special wand or that special walking stick or something like that? You can look it up, and okay, you can usually backtrack from there. It's like, all right, well, that's wood, and it's got 2 other items that I've never heard of. Where do I find those? Or do I have to craft those? And they say, oh, well, this is a gem, but you craft it from this mineral that you mine. So, all right, well, the next time I'm out, I'm now on the lookout for sapphire or something like that. So I do find that reverse engineering is pretty cool with that. But then when it comes time to picking out a block that you want to use for something, the challenge I find is that the Minecraft UI is not necessarily indicative of what the block looks like in the world. And so you go to look for like a blue tile block for your roof, because that's the first thing I was going to do if I was going to go play a fantasy, is like blue roof happens right now. But then you end up with like, here's 7 different shades of blue. And it's like, well, I have no idea what any of these look like in the world in Minecraft. So you might waste all of your time trying to get the materials for this one new block, only to put it down and go, oh, this looks like crap. I don't want this. This looks like a road block, not a roof block, And it's hard to tell from those small icons in the inventory.
Yeah, the blue roof example is exactly what I did on the New Life SMP, which was after Empires 1, I think, or maybe Empires 2, I forget. There was a short-lived modded experience that I was unable to make one episode of before I ended up having PC issues, unfortunately. But I went for a blue roof in that, and it turned out the block was made out of sugarcane from the Nether, and so I had to go and get that and then grow that by lava in the overworld in order to grow it. And then it wouldn't make a ton of blocks, but it was like making bamboo, It was like you made kind of reed roof tiles out of that. Unfortunately, I really liked that block, but I don't know if it appears in the Fantasy Minecraft mod pack. Either way, those crafting rabbit holes are something that I think this mod pack has, but it doesn't have them to the huge degree that like a tech progression mod pack will, where you're crafting ultimately something that's like a reactor that's a power source in a single block. But to do that, you've got to craft all of the components, and all the components have to be crafted using other crafting stations, and that it kind of like unpacks itself. Like, I don't think there's as much of that in this mod pack, at least as far as I have seen, which is great. One of the first things I decided to do, actually, was look up whether or not you could get a backpack, because naturally in modded, you're going to have a lot of extra items because of all of the extra stuff that's been added, and that fills up your inventory space pretty quickly. Fortunately, I found a bundle quite early, and so when I go mining and I'm getting like one of every ore just to see what it is, then I can bundle some of that stuff, and it works surprisingly well, because this mod pack is in 1.20, I think, so it's not on the current version of Minecraft, but it's pretty close. And so there are things like, bundles have been added in there. There's a few things that work off of existing Minecraft systems that were implemented quite recently, like armor trims and smithing templates and stuff like that. It uses systems like that, I think, very well. But the backpack thing, I looked it up, and it was a fairly simple recipe just involving leather and a chest. And so I thought, that's great. And then you could upscale that to, like, you surround that backpack with iron. You get the iron version of the backpack, and it's got an additional row of inventory. And you could do that up until, I think, netherite level, before it started getting into arcane resources that I'd never seen before. So there's some stuff in there that is at least familiar. Unfortunately for me, this implementation of backpacks isn't that great. And I think this is the problem with backpacks as an idea, is that the community has so many disparate ideas for at least how a backpack should even be implemented in vanilla, and no one's going to be able to agree on everything. So the people who think that backpacks are a universal solution to inventory problems, try using this and find out, because they're easy enough to craft and upgrade. They appear as an extra tab in your inventory, sort of in the same way as you get the tabs of the player inventory in creative, where you can go to the different categories for blocks and stuff. Instead, it just appears as a tab up there. You click on it and you get all of your extra inventory space opens up. I think I have about 5 extra rows with a backpack that's upgraded with like emeralds and diamonds and stuff. But then from there, you can move stuff in and out of your player inventory from that. But if you open a chest, you can't access the backpack tab anymore, so you can't move stuff directly from the chest to the backpack. It has to go through the player inventory as a middleman. And I find that process kind of frustrating, because then I'm opening a chest, closing the chest when I've got the stuff, opening the backpack, putting stuff in the backpack, going back to the chest after that, and it adds so many additional steps and stuff that you're in your inventory for, when I really just want to be running around and playing the game. I don't think it has any way of automatically picking stuff up if your inventory gets full, so you still have to like manage your backpack's contents and push stuff into it. And likewise, you don't have any way of sorting that aside from the sort tab in the top right, which again only sorts stuff alphabetically by name right now. Like, there are so many little things that I would change about it. But it helps when your first time in mod, it always sends you home with all of these different materials, including in this case 3 different kinds of silver, because there are different mods that have implemented silver for different things, and they haven't decided on a universal silver ingot that's going to be the one that we all use. So naturally you end up with like a ton of materials that are effectively the same thing. Fortunately, they've added copper to the game now, so you don't have the tech mod problem of, what copper do we use? Let's all choose to use industrial crafts copper, So yeah, I've got my issues with some of the way they've implemented things like that, but all in all, I think it's fun that they've thrown it all in there and allowed people to figure out what stuff they like about it themselves, like what aspects of a mod pack like this you enjoy interacting with. And I'm starting to find that stuff now. I think the backpacks just might not be one of them.
It's funny that you mentioned the 3 different kinds of silver, because I do remember having that experience with all of Fabric 5, because it would have had some tech components, it would have had some magic components, and you end up looking at silver, but then the MBT tag would be just like silver, and it would have the mod name next to it. Like, this is silver from, Castor's Revenge, and like, this is silver from Technonica or whatever. And you're like, well, it starts to take you out of the RP side of things, which is what it sounds like the fantasy Minecraft server is wanting to do. Because then you're just like, well, I'm reading labels in a Minecraft interface to try to figure out what's what. And that's something I find that when you deal with a mod pack like that, the mods and the features that people want often have a lot of overlap or a lot of redundancies. And I find that it gets really clogged. Like, it gets complicated far more than it needs to be with the mod packs like that. And I remember from all of Fabric that one of the ways I was able to kind of sort that stuff out was to have separate backpacks for separate mods. Like, I would just keep all of the tech stuff in one backpack, because I didn't need it all the time. It would just I would just use it for when I needed to build with it. But here's a question, because I don't know what version of a backpack you guys might have. But I had that issue on Olive Fabric when I played years ago. And one of the things you could do with a certain hotkey combo was put the backpack down. So you could put it
Oh,
down
okay.
like a shulker box and then move things back and forth. So it alleviated having to run it through your inventory. You could have essentially a backpack that had the same inventory as a double chest and just stick it down next to the double chest and just kind of like go back and forth that way. You'd still kind of have to put stuff into your inventory, I guess, but at least it allowed you to access it quicker. It was more of a point and shoot as opposed to like tabs and going around like that. But I did enjoy having the ability to put the backpack down was also good because then you could access it like a chest if you needed to in a build situation rather than having to always go into your inventory and stuff like that. So it ended up being more like a shulker box at that stage, right?
Yeah. Yeah, makes sense.
So on the Citadel, like we're dealing with mostly individual mods and again, mostly things that are performance or UI based. There are a few things like the furniture mods, which are my own choice to move forward, but I feel like you'd be saving yourself a lot of frustration if you skipped gameplay feature mods. Like if you're just looking to improve the performance and improve the UI, I feel like you'd probably be pretty safe because those mods tend to be updated more consistently. They tend to be complicated enough that they need a team to work on it. So it's not just one person. And I find that they update more regularly. But something that I've been thinking about as I've been looking for new mods that are furniture related to try and save myself the frustration of my favorite new furniture mod being discontinued when 1.22 comes out in a year. What could I potentially do? And I'm debating whether or not it's better to try to find a mod that has a lot of stuff in it or to find very specific individual mods. So like looking at something like Valhelsia, which is really more like rustic furniture, things that would look better in like a medieval type build. There's nothing that really looks good in say modern or contemporary builds. But then going to find a separate mod that would be for contemporary stuff. And maybe I want something more than just tables and chairs for that. Maybe I want to have something that has like a fridge and a sink and drapes or something like that for the modern city, because we do have a modern city build on the Citadel. And I'd be okay with that. But then like, am I going to be happy with that for the foreseeable future because the Citadel is a forever world? And if not, then like what's the admin downside of having to replace your modern furniture mod when you have a skyscraper that's got however many apartments and however many sinks and tables and chairs throughout the whole thing, right? It's the same problem I'm dealing with West Hill. Like I'm going to have to go around and replace some, not all, of the tables and chairs. Thankfully, the tables and chairs data pack has a texture pack, and the texture pack appears to still be working. I can't make new tables and chairs. I can't move existing tables and chairs. But if they're already in position and I like, I can just keep the texture pack and it seems to be displaying just fine. So I can include that in my server texture pack and have the area display as intended. I do have some double checking to do on that. But when it comes to mods, what I tested with Valhelsia, I obviously can't leave that installed on my Minecraft install when I go to play on the Citadel, so I take them out. And when I did that, I dropped into my creative world just to kind of see what happened to all of the Valhelsia models. They're just not there. They're not displaying and being something that I can't interact with and can't move. They're just not there at all. So that would be very disheartening after putting a lot of work into something like a modern city or a new medieval build, and then you have to change mods and everything just vanishes and you essentially have to do all of your interior decoration over again. So I'm really on the fence about the best way to approach it. And outside of taking the time to learn how to do my own mod that I can update on my own, then I'm kind of stuck. So what do you think would be better, to have like smaller mods that are so focused, like this is just modern furniture and this is just modern maybe appliances and this is just tables and chairs and like a vanilla kind of vibe? Like, do you think that would be better than something like the Better Furniture mod, which I think people need to come up with better names for their mods, that just has furniture across the board, like as much furniture as they think you're going to need, they've included in this one mod. Just using furniture as an example, this could be any kind of mod that you want to use. Maybe it's a farming mod or a magic mod or something like that. So do you think that it's better to have smaller focused mods, or do you think like a big mod pack like what you're dealing with is a little bit better?
I think if you're doing the things your way, which is like vanilla with sprinkles, basically, like you're just adding in a couple of mods for stuff and largely focusing on vanilla gameplay, I really think individual smaller mods are going to make more sense, because what the larger mods are going to add is bloat. And
Hmm.
it may be that because they are larger mods and they're used more universally in mod packs and stuff, they are more likely to be updated just because there's more demand for it from players. But I do think with the bigger furniture mods especially, the more stuff from it you end up using, the more you're going to miss it if it goes away. And you're also going to find that it adds to resource load on your server because it's having to make sure all of those textures are available and all the crafting recipes and stuff are in a very small way when it's just one mod. But, that kind of stuff adds up. It's why people have to increase the RAM that they allocate to Java Minecraft for all of the modded mod packs that are out there. Like they tend to upgrade that because it requires a lot more memory. And like the behind the scenes calculations that happen just get that little extra bit more complex. Multiply that over a longer period of time and you end up with something that takes a lot more resources to run. And so, yeah, the same is true of like client side as well. Like it's just going to increase stuff like loading times. It's going to increase the amount of stuff that you have to mess with in the interface. I think it makes more sense to treat that stuff piecemeal, especially since, let's say you're working on your sci-fi area, you download a mod that works for like adding a few little sci-fi touches that you want to bring in there. Then in the meantime, a mod like the tables and chairs that you end up using breaks, or like it doesn't work anymore, or it's not going to be updated or whatever. As long as you've moved on from the older area and you think, I'm probably not going to go back there, I'm happy with that project, it's done, you can remove that mod and you're not really going to miss it. Whereas
Fair.
like
Yeah.
you can keep going with the one that you know is going to be updated for your future projects. And it's not like, bringing down one mod or not being able to update to one mod when you want to breaks the whole experience. So I do think in that case it's going to work better. Obviously, for a modded server like the Fantasy Minecraft thing, if you pull out too much of it, then I think it starts to crumble a little bit, because there are some things that are reliant on other things to work, and that's some of the behind the scenes that you don't really see about people who assemble mod packs, is that they are stitching together some of the parts of one mod and some of the parts of another so that they talk to each other. And that in itself is an art form that's sort of hand in hand with making a mod in the first place. And that's why I'm actually kind of surprised that there are 3 kinds of silver that I've found so far, because usually the mod pack authors will find all of that stuff and incorporate it into one universal silver that works for each of the crafting recipes that require it from, various other mods. And I think that all depends, like, is one mod pack going to add something where the silver breaks down into nuggets the way gold and iron already do when you put it in a crafting interface? Or is another mod going to have it fashion into a ring if you put it in a crafting interface? And you have to reconcile those two things. So sometimes it might just be easier to leave 2 different kinds of silver in the game. Or you got to modify a crafting recipe so 4 ingots makes the ring, and you just make this a circle out of that in your in your crafting
Right.
table, right? So yeah, there's ways that works better, I think, when you've got a larger load of mods and everything's working together towards a coherent theme. But what you're working for is just like quality of life stuff on a vanilla server. So I think individual mods, smaller mods, makes a lot more sense for you.
And all of the performance mods that I have, with the exception of something like Sodium, which is a replacement for Optifine, which has a lot of settings and stuff, a lot of them basically do just like one thing.
Yeah,
Like
totally.
Ferrite Core is a memory mod. It's just meant to improve the Minecraft performance and utilization of memory. You've got Zero's mini maps. I mean, they're more complicated than just maps, but essentially that's what they're used for. Their main feature is like it is a map and it will mark stuff. And yes, you can teleport a little bit, but like we just use the honor system on the server and we just don't use it to teleport around. We go around vanilla in terms of transportation. I'm trying to think about other ones like again, the Shulker box, Shulker Plus mod. It really just does what it says in the tin. Like it puts items on your Shulker boxes, and there's a separate. It's a data pack, actually. No, sorry, it's a mod. There's a separate mod for like peeking inside your Shulker boxes when it's in your inventory. You can't access anything, but you can at least hover over it, hit a button, and just like, oh, that's the one with all the sand in it. That's the one with all the spruce in it. If you haven't color coded them, or if you have several that are all the same color, then you can at least peek in to see what's in there. And I find that really useful. But again, most of the mods that we have, they just do the one thing. It's only when I get into the gameplay feature mods that I find that they tend to get, as you mentioned, they get bloated. Like the tables and chairs, the Valhalsia, it's great, but it's also got curtains and lamps and like desk drawers. And it's like I don't need those. I mean, they're cool that they're there, but like I don't want to fall into the trap of putting this cool little lamp everywhere in the modern city, because then again, like if that's your lighting source and that goes away, then you have to figure out, well, how do I light all these things? So I think the idea for us is going to be to try and stick to vanilla resources as best we can. Like for lighting in the modern city, I'd rather try to embed frog lights into the ceiling, or use end rods or something that kind of looks a little bit more like modern lighting, and rather than relying on something that's a very pixelated modeled version of a lamp, that is beholden to a mod staying with you going forward.
And I think you can just end up disabling the recipes for crafting some of that stuff as well if you want to, right? Like
if I wanted to, yeah.
Yeah, it should be easy enough to go through and just remove some of the crafting recipes for it. But yeah, like there's a bit of furniture in Fantasy Minecraft that I've occasionally encountered purely by accident. I was playing around with a wood type that I wanted to build with in this creepy mansion that I'm working with, and it ended up making a bar stool, I think, and that was kind of fun. There's a bird sitting on it now, by the way, because like it treats it like a minecart or a boat where like a mob will interact with it and it will just kind of get stuck on there. So now I have a bar stool that's just populated by a bird, and I don't really know how I'm supposed to get rid of this bird other than either kill it or break the stool. So sooner or later I'm going to have like an entire bar full of like birds just sitting around and asking for, a bird bath or something to be put in there. But yeah, there's goofy stuff like that keeps popping up all the time, and it's one of the things that I've noticed about playing more of like a kitchen sink style mod pack, where it's got an overall theme, but they've really just tried to throw in a bunch, like they said, an abundance of fantasy stuff for it, is that after a while it starts to look like a real patchwork quilt of features. And like the resource pack adds a lot of vanilla text, adds a lot of like alternate textures to vanilla, so I'm not used to the way some of the blocks and items and stuff look. But the real ugly stuff comes in when the accessory system lets you find claws that can let you dig with your hands instead of using stone tools and that kind of stuff, and like a scarf that gives me like a little bit of extra health or something, except it renders all of that on my player model, so I look like a giant mess. I look like I've worn like everything that I could pull out of a fabric shop in order to dress myself for the day. And yeah, it doesn't provide much of a coherent visual, and I'm finding that about the building in this as well, because so many blocks and things are things that I don't recognize or understand, and they've not necessarily been implemented with color harmony in mind. They've just been implemented with, let's throw in this mod because it adds a bunch of cool stuff to the Nether or the overworld or whatever.
Yeah, with everything in vanilla being added for new blocks, new textures, considering all of the other blocks that are already in vanilla to potentially harmonize with, contrast with, work well with mods, like it's the mod that's being developed and then vanilla Minecraft, and they're not thinking about all the other mods that are out there unless they have a specific pairing in mind. But then very often you're just like, well, I want to use this particular wood type and this particular stone type, but they really don't go well together. They end up clashing, or if you're forced to use something that you don't particularly like because of a color conflict or even just material access. It's like, I really like these two, they'd go great together. This one is accessible early game, and this other one is like netherite level end game grind. And it's like, but I want to pair them, they look really cool, but it ends up being too much work. It takes the fun out of it, right?
Yeah. Well, I'll be reporting back, I'm sure, on my continued exploits on the Fantasy Minecraft SMP. Not server exploits, since we talked about this earlier, I feel like I should clarify. But no, my continued adventures, let's say, on Fantasy Minecraft. And I'll let you know if anything else comes up that's going to be worthy of discussion. But for now, that's where we're going to end this discussion and wrap up this episode of The Spawn Chunks. You can find more information about the show and links to some of the stuff that we've talked about today over at thespawnchunks.com. The music for the show is composed by me, and The Spawn Chunks is proud, as ever, to be a listener-supported podcast. If you're getting some value out of the show, why not consider putting some value back in? You can visit patreon.com/thespawnchunks to join our community, where pledging at any level gets you an invite to our patrons-only Discord chat. You can listen to the show live when we record it every week. We also have our monthly and quarterly hangouts that you can enjoy. A couple of those are up there in the patrons feed already if you are new to the show and you want to check out what those are about. We currently have 314 patrons. We're saying farewell to somebody from last week, but special thanks as always go to our content engineer patrons: Gundar H Striker, Hunter555, Jumbo Sail, Mindtrip Media, Party Voyager, and Yitz. Thank you all for your support on this episode.
Sharing the podcast with your friends is the easiest way to support the show. You can find us at the Spun Chunks on all the social media that matters. New episodes are available on Mondays on all the major podcasting platforms and now on YouTube in video format. So if you like to watch your podcasts, you can check us out there. You can email the show at spawnchunkmail@gmail.com. The RSS feed is linked at the spawnchunks.com, and the patron-only RSS feed is on the Patreon page. That's where you can listen to the render distance, the extended version of the podcast.
My name is Johnny, but online I go by Pixel Riffs. You can find most of what I do at youtube.com/pixelriffs, where the Minecraft Survival Guide is currently in its 3rd season. I stream 3 days a week on Twitch, where I do behind-the-scenes work for my YouTube series, and right now I am playing on the Fantasy Minecraft SMP, along with my ridiculous Elden Ring A to Z project. I'm also the voice of the unofficial Hermitcraft recap, which you can find through a quick YouTube search, and aside from that, I'm at Pixel Riffs on both Twitter and Instagram. Joel, where can people find you online?
Everything that I'm doing online can be found at joelduggan.com. That includes a link to the Citadel Cafe, my other podcast about sci-fi and fantasy entertainment. Stephen ESC and I sat down and talked about Deadpool and Wolverine this week, so that was a lot of fun. That's going to be published this coming week. You can find me at Joel Duggan on social media and Joel Duggan on Twitch, where I stream Wednesday through Saturday. And on Fridays, I build Lego live on stream. And if you're watching the video version, you can see the West Hill main gate slowly taking shape behind me on the table. So that's what's happening on Fridays. And of course, the rest of the time, I've normally been building in West Hill on the Citadel, but right now we're fixing that iron farm. So if you want to see how that ends up, check it out over on twitch.tv/Joel Duggan.
Thanks for visiting the Spawn Chunks. The world outside is infinite, but it needs more jetpacks.